Okay, I'm back at the park. This is where I usually go to think and write. It's a bit windy today, but we'll see how we go. I'm wearing my trackies from, I don't know what the brand is, but I bought them in Cape Town. Got my athletic greens and creatine. And yeah, welcome back to Monday Diaries. Okay, the grass is wet, so I'm gonna find a new spot. I think this looks pretty good. If you're wondering why I'm wearing those shoes, you can thank Flynn for that. Barefoot, baby, let's bring it back. So, if you're new here, Monday Diaries is a weekly series where I document my life and the process of building Art of Mondays in public. Yes, I brought my laptop down because it's where I write my notes, and I'm filming on my phone right now, not the camera. The phone was kind of just more convenient, and I wanted a frictionless system. Oh, one sec. Frictionless system to produce content so that I had no excuses, which I'm a big believer in. So from here on out, this is just going to be raw, uncut, off the top of the dome. Well, not really. I've got some dot points in front of me. And yeah, something funny, I looked up my name on YouTube because that's how I find my profile these days. And I found it was like next to my old YouTube channel from like 7 years ago when I was on Cocos. And we still have less subscribers than the channel from 7 years ago. So if you're watching this, go subscribe. If you're interested in not just my journey, but philosophy and life and thinking and I don't know, all the stuff, go subscribe. And let's beat the the old account. So let me rewind to the start of the week. I'm going back in time, so right now I'm in WA, but the week I'm recapping, I was in Cape Town. I was about to leave Cape Town, but right towards the end, I went and stayed with my great aunt Jenny and Uncle Frank again, literally in their retirement home. So I lived with them in their little compound. It was actually really cool. I mean, obviously just old people who live there, but it was like this little gated community vibe, and I'd love to do something like that for young people. But anyway, besides the point, when I was there, I basically did nothing but think and write. So I've got this journal that I write in. I've got another one that I kind of brain dump more business stuff and messiness and stuff like that. This one's a bit more put together. And I don't know, I think it reminded me a lot of me in high school, because when I was in school, English was like not my strongest subject. It was probably the bottom out of all my subjects. And I was a good writer, but not in the traditional sense, not in the way of structuring an essay or whatever. So I would just creative write, and I could write forever from a creative storytelling perspective. But I never got great grades because of it. But anyway, when I was with Jenny and Frank, I just started writing a lot, telling stories, short stuff in my own style that was kind of unstructured and whatever. And maybe I'm going to start putting it out in the world through emails or posts or whatever. But that was really fulfilling for me, and I've kept up the habit since. I come down to this exact park and I write pretty often these days. So that was a big thing. And probably the biggest takeaway from my time there is that for great ideas to come, you need to create space for the great ideas to come. And it's so like, it's almost cliche to say, but it's so true. Like in our lives, we barely allow ourselves time to be bored in the car, let alone sit with yourself for 2 hours and do nothing else, you know? So that was a big takeaway for me. And it sort of reminded me of a story when I was just finished high school. My first job out of school in my gap year was at a timber mill, and I basically worked 12-hour shifts, night shifts. So I had no life outside of this. I lasted 5 months doing this, and basically I would just stand there and watch wood go past on machinery, and if it fucked up, I would go and fix it and then stand there again. And you weren't allowed to sit down. There were security cameras everywhere, so they could kind of see what you're doing. The reason you couldn't sit down is because you had to stay active and watching the wood. They didn't even have seats for you. And you could do nothing else. You couldn't listen to music. You couldn't listen to podcasts or anything. We had like these hard hats, and some of us got lucky and got these earmuffs that were connected to the hard hat, and you could like wire in or wear AirPods or something. But most of the time you couldn't. So you're just like bored out of your brains for hours and hours and hours on it. And 3 hours, they broke it up. And I look back on that time really fondly, to be honest, because it was the time where I had my greatest ideas, and it was because of that intentional boredom. I used to rip off the labels on the back of the packs of wood, and I'd write down ideas. I'd find the blind spot in the camera, and I'd go hide in the corner and write down ideas and come back. And it's funny, those ideas led to so much in my life. For example, one of the ideas I had was to buy a Instagram account and something with like already a base following, so that it would be easier to grow. That was my thinking. And then I had software. It was called Follow Liker, and you could just hook the account up to it, and you could automate engagement through it. So you could go and follow and like and comment on things, all automated through hashtags and stuff like that. And there was parameters to it. You couldn't do too much because your account would get flagged and banned. But back then it was a lot more effective. Now it doesn't really work. This was 2016, so long time ago. And anyway, I bought an account for $160. It had 7,000 followers. It was like a travel account, and I turned it into I kept it travel, but like van, surf life orientated. I grew that account to 155,000 followers over the next 3 years with just hard yakka. I posted 2, sometimes 3 times a day. It was a feature page, so I would just find content and then repost it and give credit. But I didn't realize how hard I actually hustled on that until years later. I was like, shoot, that really was a lot of energy that I put into it. But it paid off in some ways. Actually, I had a friend, Cami, who I co-founded the brand with later on. He had a similar account. It was called @surfers on Instagram. Same thing. He was just like 20k followers ahead of me, so I just learned from all of his mistakes. And he got it to 150k, and then he sold it for like 15 grand, which was, at the time, we were late teenagers, and we were just like, yo, this is like unheard of money, like, Wi-Fi money, we've made it. Well, he was like that. I didn't make any money off it. And it was like, that was like the first foray into online business, I suppose. And what I ended up doing was hooking up. I started working with a lot of local businesses and just hooking them up to the software I was using. I didn't tell them that was the case, but I just, automated engagement for them. And, over the course of a year or two, there's probably 500,000 followers accrued over a bunch of different accounts. I used to charge $59 a month for it, I think, on the lower tier, up to $129, I think, on the high tier. Super undervalued myself for it, and I learned a lot from that process. Also, never wanted to speak to a client, didn't want to get on the phone. I was too timid to do any of that. I just wanted to be an email warrior. So I learned a lot. I got out of my comfort zone a lot during that process. I think when I was 19, I was making maybe $1,200-1,300 a month. My costs were a few $100s. So, it was almost enough to live off. And I don't know, it was clunky and gross, but it kind of worked. It was my first taste of online business. So that all led from the timber mill story of writing ideas on the back of the card. Maybe it was ego driven. Maybe I wanted to be well known or whatever, have social credit, but it led to that. So there you go. Anyway, that was a timber mill story. But going back to the writing and the thinking, a lot of what I was listening to, I was reading as well, was the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I re-listened to that. It's probably my 3rd or 4th time. And here's I wanted to read a few of the lines that hit me the hardest while I was doing that. Okay, I know I cut the video, but I was just trying to find my page. There's a bunch of concepts, but a few that really stood out. One is talking about your unfair advantage, or the way he puts it is specific knowledge. And that's really the combination of things that you uniquely have that no one else has. It's not just that one ability to edit a video, because everyone has the ability to edit a video, or most people. I think my phone's wobbling. It's like the combination of me being able to edit a video plus having used that automated software to grow accounts 7 years ago, plus all of these micro things that I uniquely have that skill set, no one else does. And that's really fascinating to think about. And he also goes on to say, do the thing that feels like play and not work. If it feels like play to you and it feels like work to others, then you'll outwork them any day of the week because you enjoy that process. So find that thing, whatever it is for you. Ask your parents what you used to do as a kid and just did so effortlessly and easily, and do more of that. And I wrote down like a list of things that I effortlessly do, or at least, I guess effortlessly. These things are playing games, obsessing over things, overachieving or being competitive, storytelling, shooting and editing videos that create emotion, communicating authentically with people, coming up with ideas, hand-eye coordination, just natural sporting ability, learning things quickly. I'm very curious and I feel like I can read people pretty well. So all of these things are things that feel like play to me, and if I do more of that and less of what has resistance, then ultimately I'll move in the right direction. Which kind of plays into what you do and who you do it with is far more important than how hard you work. And this one hit me like a ton of bricks, because I feel like for a lot of my life I felt like I had to be the hardest working person in the room. I felt guilty when I wasn't working. I still feel that, when I'm away from the desk or whatever, with friends, should be enjoying myself, I feel like I could be doing more. I feel like I could be more productive. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But what you do and who you do it with is far more important than how hard you work. Because if you pick the right idea and you pick the right people to do it with versus someone who's just working on the wrong thing, you're going to win like all day. So not that it's about winning, but I think that was just like such a big takeaway for me, is just working on the right things. If you can't decide, the answer is no. If you're faced with two equal paths, or two paths really, take the path with the most short-term pain. Run uphill. Because usually what happens is if you take the other path, you can have more long-term pain, and that's a lot worse off in the long term. So take the short-term pain. This is another great one. Happiness is a default state. Happiness is there when you remove the sense that something is missing in your life. That's something I feel on a spiritual level, always being like a typical, like, there's always more, there's always something else I could be achieving. But I'm quite happy as well in that process. So I think it's a balance. But I wanted to tell you a story. I went to a self-development, personal development event in Perth City like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, probably. And as a part of it, they did this exercise. It was very vulnerable. It was like staring into strangers' eyes for 10 minutes and, talking a lot about your fears and real depth of, you sharing vulnerably. And there was this one exercise where we were in small groups and we stood out in the front of the group and they were all standing there listening and holding space. And then you would say, my greatest fear is X. And then you'd shake it out of your body. And people going there talking about, it's either greatest fear or the thing you hold most shame around. People were talking about like cheating on their partners and, childhood traumas and stuff that like there were, serious things. And for me, I went up there and I was like, my greatest fear is unfulfilled potential, and it was such a funny like thing to think about, especially at that point. I think I've let go of a lot of that, but this feeling of just not having enough or not acquiring it quick enough, and it just comes from a place of lack of abundance, also probably from growing up and all the rest. But I thought it was fascinating that came up for me, and for other people it's very different things. So it kind of ties in with the things, everything. It ties in with everything, and it makes a lot of sense for me. So I wanted to share that. I actually don't know why I wanted to share that. I had a note here. Let me find it. Yeah, it kind of tied in with that idea of feeling guilty when I wasn't doing something progressive or I wasn't working. And then when I read that quote from Naval saying what you do and who you do it with is so much more important than how hard you work, I was like, yo, that makes so much sense. Why am I so worried about that? So hopefully that resonates with one of you. I don't know. We'll see. As for Art of Mondays, I'll switch gears real quick. Normally I do the Art of Mondays update at the start of these episodes, but I saved it for the end this time. I had a few comments on YouTube talking or saying they loved hearing about the members that we have on board. So I thought, why not make a little segment where I talk about a member each episode. So there's this one guy in there that used to run a brand called Therapy Blanket, and he ended up exiting that for low, mid 7 figures. I don't know the exact number. But while he still had the brand, funnily enough, he was actually one of the first clients that I had at Brand Booster, which is a creative agency that I ran at the time. And he, honestly, they really became the backbone of the agency. Even once he sold, the new owners stayed on with us. For the sake of transparency, they paid us $8,000 a month for content, a lot of content. It was 20 videos and 100 photos or something nuts. But for me, who was happy to over deliver and lock that in. And like I said, it became the backbone. That was such a worthy trade-off. And ironically, or not ironically, it's really cool to see he was an early mover with Brand Booster. Now he's an early mover with Art of Monday, supporting me in that process. So he knows who he is, obviously, if he's watching this. I thought that was pretty cool. So I'll keep that up. I'll talk about new members or exciting things that are happening. We have our group calls next week. So we'll be able to have a lot more happening. I'll have some more information to share with you guys soon. As for my daily posting on Reels, this is part of our lead generation strategy. I admittedly didn't post again this week. I've been really slack on the Reels, kind of the last couple of weeks. And next week you'll see as well, I haven't really posted. But there were still some results. So I still reached 255,000 accounts. That's just from old videos ticking over on Instagram. I had 6,679 profile visits. I had 1,200 followers, plus 1,200, minus 1,600. So I lost net in the week. I lost 400 followers, which again doesn't surprise me. When I'm not actively posting and actively gaining that many, they fall off over time. 93 people clicked the link in my bio. We had 3 applications for Art of Mondays and 0 new members this week. This usually comes during the final week of the month, so I'm not too worried about that. We only open doors once a month, so the first Monday of the month. So usually in the lead up to that Monday is when more action and more urgency is happening, so that's when people jump on board. But it does highlight the need for lead generation and keeping our pipeline full and not just relying on one channel, i.e. my personal brand, usually Instagram. So that's where we put a lot of our focus. And next week I can share more about a cold email strategy that's worked for us. We acquired a member through that already. We're also going to go live with the Art of Monday social media accounts and start pushing more original content through that, not just relying on my personal brand. And there's a lot of fun stuff happening. I'm glad I got to do this here in the space, show you a bit more of my home. Maybe I'll do an apartment tour at some point. I know a lot of people are curious about the little hub we have with I'm living with my partner and my best mate and my brother and their partners, and it's really cool how we have this set up. So maybe in a future video. Until then, subscribe if you want to see more about this journey, and I hope you start fucking with Mondays too. Peace.